Yakob Koreyjbanın, non-resident fellow, Center for Eurasian Studies, Poland.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a pleasure to be here again. A pleasure and a true joy of a scholar and theoretician who can see the history happening. Because my deep feeling is that what we are witnessing here is the future in the making. You know, I come from Poland, a country that has and always had interesting neighbors, and this is what makes our two countries similar to each other despite the geographical distance. And this is not exactly an optimistic constatation, because as we could see during last few months, not all of your neighbors are interested in peace, progress, cooperation, and prosperity. And therefore, my question to you is, do you think that the unconstructive stance of your Armenian partner during the peace process is simply a bargaining, a kind of theater, a part of the negotiating position, or is it something deeper, long-term, a strategy? And if this continues, is there a plan B in case Yerevan keeps rejecting the peace and engages external forces to destabilize this region? And I know that Azerbaijan has a lot of strategic patience. You proved it more than once. But what if your patience is ignored and abused? Is there an alternative strategy for such a case? Thank you.
Well, alternative strategy can only be continuing the arms race. We have no other choice. It is not what is preferable, especially taking into account that we need a lot of financing to rebuild the liberated territories. But if we don't reach a peace agreement, that will mean that Armenia, as you mentioned, is planning something different. And they're using this process only to win time. We have quite substantial reasons to believe that this is the case, though we are not sure, taking in account the history when we were, since 1992 until 2020, in the process of negotiations, but actually Armenia used these negotiations only in order to cement the occupation and to make the de facto occupation eternal. That was their plan. And now when we not only analyze more, but when we hear a lot of domestic politics in Armenia, we once again get convinced that they were not planning to liberate even 1 centimeter of our territory, including the current government, because the way how the current government is behaving should not mislead anyone. And when I hear from some Armenian supporters in the West that look how brave they behave, I always say that, but what was the motivation for their bravery? Huh? If not for 2020, September, November, today they would have continued to shout in Hankendi, Karabakh is Armenia. So we made them brave. They make brave steps, if they can be considered, not because they're so constructive, but because they're scared. Let's be very open and frank. They are scared. And in order not to be scared, they need to have peace with us. And we will see, because, as I said, the factor of so-called Nagorno-Karabakh is out. They agreed that it will not be in the peace agreement. So that means that the main obstacle is not here any longer. And if they stick to some not so important terminology, and we will just clearly see that they want again to use this time in order to get more weapons and then to attack us again. But we will not give them this chance because it's absolutely clear. And once again, I want to say those who try to direct them against us, they're making a big mistake. So we already have a very, very bitter, how to say, experience of almost 30 years of occupation, and we'll plan our future based on a real situation. So this is how we see the process. So I think by the end of the year it will be absolutely clear. So if the peace agreement is not signed, then, as I said, arms race to be continued. And, well, if they don't want peace agreement, we can live without peace agreement. But will it be comfortable for them to live next to us without peace agreement? I don't think so. So I think it's mainly in their interest, more than in our interest, to agree on the terms which are based on international law. And in these proposals and these comments which we sent, there is nothing which cannot be accepted. Only they must be reasonable and not to demand unachievable. And also important is for them to know, and for those who support them, that the 30 years of occupation and the result of the Second Karabakh War should not be ignored, and no one should behave as if that never happened. The results of the war always influenced the post-war situation. And in our case, we did not take advantage of our victory, not at all. We stopped, as I promised, during the war. And I said, give us a date when you leave our territory and we will stop. And we stopped. And that's already almost 4 years. And then in Karabakh, when they started to demonstratively ignore us, when they held so-called presidential elections in Nagorno-Karabakh and elected so-called new president, when a criminal oligarch from Moscow came there and started to behave as if he is a prime minister of a country, and also financing terrorism and also spreading threats to different people, they should have known that we will not tolerate that. And we many times delivered the message to them directly and through Brussels and through other channels, that don't play with fire. We can restore sovereignty anytime and no one will stop us. And that's happened. It lasted several hours, not 23. 23 was needed just to finalize the formalities. It lasted several hours, less than 10 hours, and it was done. So that was a lesson to them. Second Karabakh War was a lesson. And again, we did it, and we didn't do anything else. Who could have stopped us then if we had some terrible plans as some people in some Western European capitals try to present? Who could have stopped us then? These retired French policemen on the border, could they stop us? Of course not. We stopped ourselves because we don't want territory of Armenia. We want only to be under our control completely and forever.